I'm about to go in here and visit Kerrie, who has a great story of growing up reasonably wealthy, but then later on, with 3 kids, married, having no income for a time, and then a very low income. She shares her experience about going from one to the other, having much and having very little, and how she experienced joy in both circumstances, how she was content through all of that. Let's go to that interview with Kerrie now. So Kerrie, you've had some experiences with having plenty and having barely enough.
Yes.
Tell me, when do you think you were happier?
I think I was happier both ways.
Yeah? You were content with both situations?
Yes.
Why was that, do you think? Was it in different ways?
Well, growing up, we had plenty. My parents worked hard and provided very well. We had a lovely home with a lot of beautiful things passed down from my grandparents. And I was very happy. And I think because it has to do with your relationships, like things weren't the important thing.
Right. Yep. So as long as you had close relationships,
yes,
the things were sort of background.
Yes.
Tell me, what have you learned about having possessions then? What have you learned about the value of things?
I'm more interested in having things that function. If you've got the basic things that function well, I'm happy.
Right. So you don't go browsing through catalogues looking for...
I must admit, I browse through looking for clothes on websites, but never with, I wish I could have this or that. Yeah. I don't look at things that I can't afford. It doesn't interest me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's part of being happy in whatever situation you're in, not going and looking at things that you're never going to be able to afford, and I guess going into debt perhaps to...
Yeah, so I just don't do debt.
Yeah.
I thank my parents for that, because they always said, you don't buy what you can't afford. If you haven't got the money for it, don't buy it. And of course, back in that, we're talking way back, like 70 years ago plus. So, people didn't rely on hire purchase or lay-by, or you saved up for what you wanted. And that's been good training. And the other thing my mother did that helped me a lot, we had these beautiful antiques and beautiful furniture and so on from my grandparents. But if something accidentally broke, if we broke something accidentally, my mother would say, well, it's just things.
Really? Yeah.
Well. And that set me up for later on in life, because things can be taken away from you at a moment's notice. Fire or flood or, some catastrophe.
Yep. Would your parents encourage you to look after your things though?
Oh, yes.
Yes?
Oh, yes, definitely.
But accidents, it was...
But if it was an accident, they would just, accept it.
Very good advice. Tell me about a time when you didn't have very much.
Well, I always go first back to the days when Brian was in Bible college, because we had nothing really in earthly terms. So, well, we did, because we had a small amount of money. We were able to buy a little tiny house in Sherwood when we came up here to Bible college from New South Wales. But we were paying off our house and paying off a car, and we had 3 little children at that stage, and we had really no income at first, but some family friends felt led to send us $28 a week.
Really?
And
you didn't ask for that?
No, they just told us. They prayed about it and they felt to do that. And, of course, going back all those years, it was worth more than that. But we paid off the house and car with that. and had $8 left for food and clothes and books for college.
Remarkable. Sounds crazy these days.
I know. And my husband used to do little mowing jobs or something, whatever he could get. And then after a while I got a part-time job, a nursing assistant, but we grew vegetables in the backyard and we bought very basic things. We used powdered milk because it was cheaper than fresh.
Yeah.
And we bought rice and porridge and things like that, and had a lot of stir-fry vegetables and rice. And the interesting thing was the children never complained about the food. They never said, we want something else, or they were happy. And
did they ever get a taste of treats?
oh, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know so much in those particular years, but later on they did. But one little story was there was one day when I gave the children porridge for lunch because we just didn't have anything else. And I heard them later telling the two boys next door, oh, we had porridge for lunch. And I was so embarrassed until the children came in. I said, what did the boys say when you told them that? And what the boys had said was, oh, that's not fair. We never get porridge for lunch.
That's right, novelty. Wow.
Yes.
That's very interesting, Kerrie. Was there anything that you really felt you went without that you missed?
No, and I think that has to do with your expectations. You know, if you want to have big, expensive things, then you would feel as though you were doing without. But I can't honestly think of anything that I felt I did without. I mean, I'm sure I did go without things, but... Even
coming from a fairly wealthy childhood, you didn't feel...
No, not at all. I think that is to my parents as well, that things weren't the important thing. The children, I asked them the question some time ago about, you know, did they feel as though they missed out when they were growing up? And
really?
I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and they all said, no, we never felt deprived or we never felt we missed out on things, because they said you always used to do little treats and things to make up for it. We had carpet picnics and when we couldn't afford to go to the Ekka in Brisbane, I went and bought sweets and chocolates and things, and we made our own show bags, and so we had a lot of fun.
You were creative with what you did have, making fun. Now, you would have had, I guess, a little bit of choice to go into this situation. I guess Brian would have given up a job to go to Bible college.
Yes.
What made you confident to do that, knowing that, we're not going to have an income for a time?
Well, we'd prayed about going to Bible college when we first got married, and God basically told us no. And so it wasn't until we had 3 little children that he said, right, now's the time. And Brian was already ordained. We'd pastored a church for 4.5 years at that stage. And we just followed what God showed us to do. And so I don't know that we even considered...
Right, that was sort of the direction your life was headed. But
yes.
You were quite okay to say, well, we're going to go into a season of not having any income.
I don't think we even thought about it.
Oh, really?
I can't remember thinking about it. We did have, as I said, we did have a small deposit. We put down $5,000 on a house.
Yeah.
And we had a car.
And were you intently looking for work?
Yes, I was looking for work. We couldn't both go to college at that time. I went later on. But I was happy to work part-time, and
Did it take you a long time to find work?
I think it was a couple of months, something like that. We believe very much in tithing. I know different churches teach different things, but we'd been taught pay your tithe and give an offering.
So you were paying 10% of
10% of what we had.
Yeah.
Yes, and we paid our tithe many, many times when we didn't have any milk or bread or petrol for the car.
How did that work out?
Well, in those days, they would, sometimes people would give you what they called a Pentecostal handshake, and they'd give you $20 or $10. And so we'd put $2 of petrol in the car and buy milk and
so
that sort of
sometimes
thing.
you'd come back from church with more than
you
went with.
Yes, that's true. And sometimes people would give us a box of groceries, which was a wonderful blessing. But we decided at the beginning that if we were given a box of groceries, that we would divide it in two and give half to another student couple. And we did that every time we were given something. We divided it and gave it away. And we thought we were very well off because we could give away so much.
Wow. How did you find receiving those gifts from other people?
It was hard. It was hard at first, but then we did accept it as the Lord's provision and just were very thankful to the people. And Carolyn said to me one day, "Do you remember the treasure hunts we used to have?" And I said, "No, what do you mean?" And she said, when we had no bread and we would we'd all go on a treasure hunt around the house, behind the lounge cushions and under the car seats. And she said we always found enough.
Food? You found food around the house?
No, coins.
Coins.
To buy bread.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was exciting.
That is exciting.
So
what a story.
We really had a wonderful time. We were very blessed. And it wasn't just way back then, of course. The Lord's continued to do that all through my life. He's
is there
always...
any particular stories of provision that stand out?
Yes. Well, back still when the boys were young, we were at Liverpool, a church at Liverpool for 4 years, and it was very cold in the winter and they only had shorts. And we knew they needed long pants and we had no money, so we prayed. And, of course, it was wonderful to teach the children, pray if you don't have something, And that same day was Sunday morning. We prayed about this, that the boys needed long pants and would God provide some money or some clothes, and went off to church. And a lady came up to me with a bag of clothes and she said, "Look, my boys have grown out of these and I think they might fit your boys." And inside were just 7 pairs of long pants, nothing else, and they were all beautifully ironed, in good condition.
How about that?
And they fitted our boys perfectly. And there was one time David needed brown leather lace-ups for school, whatever school it was, and we had no money again. And anyway, I'd prayed about it, and I went to a shop to get food, but I passed a shoe shop, and out the front of the shoe shop there was a table of shoes, all different kinds of shoes, but there was one pair of brown leather lace-ups, and they were $4. Right. And really it was the last pair in the store, so they'd put them out for sale. Yeah. Things like that. And when I moved in here, I needed a washing machine. Couldn't afford a washing machine. So I prayed about what to do and saw one on, I think it was either Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace, for $30, this washing machine. Yeah. And I thought, that's not going to be very good. But I've been here nearly 2 years and it works perfectly.
Oh, really?
So God just, at one time he told me, I will always look after you. And he always has. So,
have you had any regrets when it comes to purchases or the way that you've used money?
well, I haven't, I must say I'm not, I don't say I'm really good with money, other than I tend to give it away, which is, some people would think, well, question it, but I don't know. I've tried to do it as the Holy Spirit shows me, but there was one time I had quite a lot of money after an inheritance, and I bought a new car, little Hyundai gets, and gave several thousand to each of my children. And then the rest of it, I can't really account for it all. So I did, a lot of that money went to Kenya, to a little church in Kenya over time, bits and pieces, but yes, many thousands. So, and I can't account for the rest of it. So I'm not good at managing money in a sense. So maybe that's why I've had little. But I've always had plenty.
There you go. And I guess that's maybe freeing, not thinking about where, things are going to come from, and not thinking about money, having to think about money a lot. So have you ever had to be like looking, where's the next meal coming from?
No, we've never gone without a meal. The time that I gave the kids porridge for lunch was about closest to that. But there have been times after our first baby was born, Brian lost his job for whatever reason. I think he was made redundant or something. And we were 5 weeks without an income, and we got behind with our bills. And we couldn't tithe because we just had no money, but we kept track of how much we owed in tithes. And as soon as he got a job, we paid our tithe first, and then our other bills were all caught up within 3 weeks. So there was another time when we had really gotten behind with bills. I think it had to do with car repairs. And it was a big expense that we just didn't have the money for, and we were concerned about that. Certainly we prayed about it, but we felt we had to do something else. And we agreed to go to the bank and talk to them, and they were able to consolidate some of our debts and to grant us an overdraft, which sort of got us over the hump. But they're the only 2 times that we've really gotten behind. So you've got to have a budget so that you're going to be able to pay your bills.
Why is being generous with your money so important to you?
I just like it. I think I really got to like it so much when we were in college and dividing the food and seeing how God provided for us. And I liked the feeling of being able to give it away. And I like helping other people. So, yes, so I suppose if I could manage money better, the Lord might give me a lot, and then I could give a lot away. But I've always wondered why people, recently there was someone won $100 million.
Right,
and I said, what would you do with $100 million?
It'd be interesting to see how their life is now.
Yes. Well, you'd provide for your children and family members, I suppose. And
would you live somewhere else if?
Oh, no.
No.
Very comfortable right here, and I've good neighbours and lovely people, lovely staff, and a lot of them are Christians, and then there are others who are not, but they're sort of open. And we, I think that's one of the things. You have to enjoy simple pleasures.
Mm.
And the biggest pleasure around here for most people is to just get out and have a cup of tea together out at the table outside and have a chat.
That's good advice. Everyone could ask themselves, what's a simple pleasure
Yes.
that you enjoy that doesn't cost a lot of money, that you can do regularly?
And
because you don't need money to be happy, do you?
no. And even as children, my parents didn't have a car until I was 18.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And so we walked everywhere, or we went by train. And as long as we, like on the weekends, we would go on the train to Cronulla Beach in Sydney and swim, or we'd go on the motor train to Heathcote and hike through the bush. And those were as much fun as going to a theme park or anything like that.
I love it how you can go to the most scenic spots in the world and sit there for free while, you've got these multi-million dollar houses behind you that people are paying to live there, but anyone can visit.
Yes, well, that worries me about big houses because there's more to look after and
more
maintain.
To protect and worry about.
Yes, exactly.
No one wants to steal from someone who doesn't have much.
True.
How do you decide where to give money? What needs do you ever think, oh, that's not a worthy need, like that sort of thing?
I just ask the Lord, and sometimes something will come up on the internet, on Facebook or something, and I think, should I be giving to that? Actually, there was something this morning. I can't actually remember what it was, but something came up that was put forward as a need, and I just didn't feel to do anything about it. And so I didn't.
Yep. So you enjoy giving even when you don't see the results, the other side of the world, you don't see the person receiving it, you still feel that joy in giving?
Well, absolutely. I think it's more the joy of doing what God wants me to do. So it's not actually to do with the giving, it's just to do with living God's way.
And being generous is part of that. How does, I guess you've answered this in many ways, but to sum up, how has the way you've used money shown what's important to you?
Well, I think one of the ways is that it's been a marvellous opportunity to teach our children how to trust God, because we never really had much money as they were children, and so we prayed about everything. If the children needed something, well, we sat down and prayed about it. The biggest experience was when we were invited as a family to go to New Zealand and work with children's Bible ministries over there. And we didn't have the money. They wanted us to come for 6 weeks over the Christmas holidays and work with them in kids' camps. And so they invited the whole family. But we had $6.76 in the bank.
Yeah.
And we had several bills, several $100 of bills owing. And we prayed about it and felt God wanted us to go. But we said, well, we wouldn't go if we were still owing all this money. And we had no way of getting the money. Brian was pastoring, but on a very low stipend. And so we just prayed about it. And we had to have the money by a certain date to get advance fares, which were cheaper. And we, one morning, the Lord woke me up. Oh, no, I woke up, but I was sort of half awake, half asleep. And I heard him say, the call to go is the capacity to be there. And it sounded very strange, but I sort of woke up and thought, well, what does that mean? Well, if God's called us to go, then that's as good as having the capacity to be there.
Wow.
So we, as a family, of course, prayed about the money over some weeks, and people would give us, again, groceries. One night there was a knock at the door. I opened the door, there's no one there, but there's this big box of groceries, and of course that meant I didn't have to buy groceries for the week. So that was that money saved. But I can't remember how it all came in, but on the last day we had to have it to get the cheaper fares. We were in the bank just before closing time, banking the rest of that money. And we went to New Zealand. They said they would look after us over there if we could raise the airfares. And so we went over. They did look after us. We had a great time in that 6 weeks. And after that, I became their representative in Queensland for 10 years. 10? No, that can't be. Yes, 10 years. And
very significant time.
Yes, it was. And when we got home, we had $6.76 in the bank.
Back to where you were.
But all our bills were paid.
It sounds to me, Kerrie, just listening to that story, that you have an abundance mindset where you don't feel you're lacking in any way.
No.
You don't feel like there's anything you can't do because of money. Money doesn't hold you back at all.
No. Money is of little significance. In fact, I wrote a book some years ago, and at first I was advertising it and selling books, but then I kind of felt like my mind was focused too much on the money, and so I stopped advertising it. Haven't kept selling the books really, but
it's still for sale though, isn't it?
Beg your pardon?
It's still for sale, the book. You just
yes, it's still for sale. But I just didn't want my mind to be focused on money.
Yeah.
Because that's just not the important thing in life. And I think being grateful for what you have, being content doesn't have anything to do with things, possessions. It has to do with people, your family and friends and people you relate to and your relationship with God.
Pursuing money at the cost of those things isn't worth it.
Not worth it.
Well, your life is an example of that, Kerrie.
Well, I've certainly been blessed and I've enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for speaking and sharing with us so honestly today.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you, Kerrie, for sharing. Let Kerrie know in the comments what stood out to you. That would be great to hear your thoughts. And if you liked this interview with Kerrie, perhaps you might like this one up here. Another great interview about someone who went through difficult circumstances and yet came out the other side. Look forward to seeing you next time for the Figuring Life Out Together podcast.